Good evening and welcome to Marin Women's Hall of Fame. I'm Janet Childers. We're talking tonight with Patricia Garbarino, a 1999 inductee into the Hall of Fame, being honored for her contribution to the environment. Patty, welcome.
Thank you.
We had a great dinner this spring to honor you and the other inductees. How did you enjoy that festive event?
Oh, it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. As I mentioned when they told me of the award, the thought that I would be thought of in the same category to me was miraculous, with people like Mrs. Terwilliger and Gloria Duncan, whom both I believe got the award in the environment, and Shirley Thornton, who's done so much work in education across the state, and all of the others, Margie Belrose. It was just a wonderful gift. I still think it was a mistake, but it was just a tremendous gift, and I look back at that night and I'm so happy that I said the things that I said, and I got the opportunity, I think, to have been able to have the opportunity to say things that were very important to me was a wonderful gift.
You paid a very touching tribute to your father that night.
I did. I'll try to go through this without getting weepy again. You'll remember, I think I cried. I made a record. I am a very emotional person. That's part of my makeup and my background. And I succeeded in weeping through the entire speech, and people who know me accepted that. My father cried through the entire night, but I did. I dedicated the award to my father because work in the environment certainly was what I'm following and maintaining of what he's done in recycling and the reuse of materials. So I really felt as though the award belonged to him, but knowing that they didn't give it to a man, they gave it to a woman, I dedicated it to his honor.
Yes, the Marin Women's Hall of Fame.
Yes,
it would
exactly.
have to be you. And you are honored partly, let's just say who you are and what you're doing now. You're honored partly for your work as the Vice President of Marin Sanitary Service. And tell us a little bit about how you came to be in that field. I've heard many times it said that it is not a woman's field.
It definitely is not. You have to have somewhat of a thick skin and be able to go home at night and lose some of the things that may have come your way, or some of the rougher side of life, I guess that's what I would say, and just still forge forward, because it definitely is not a woman's field, and it's not becoming any more integrated now than it was when I first got started, especially with all of the acquisitions. I came into this field as a total surprise to my father. I'm proud to say I actually taught, and that is the profession that I was trained in, and did that for 11 years for the county schools office, and worked primarily, my credentials were with the severely handicapped. So I had anticipated staying in that field for a long time, and got into a very specialized area, and the funding began to run out, and unfortunately my back was starting to bother me a little bit. I lifted most of the children that I taught with or taught, and remember going, most of my extended family lives in Italy, and I'm very close to them, so I remember going and visiting them and hearing that the funding had completely been eliminated for the position that I had, and I had a choice of going back into a classroom of guys that were bigger than me, and it was something that I probably could not have tolerated. As a matter of fact, I think the teacher was in the hospital because she couldn't handle it, so I had the choice of taking a leave for a little while. And I had worked all my life since I was 14 years old. And at that time, I guess I was, I must have been in my mid-30s or in my early 30s. So I decided to take 6 months off. Actually, I had an offer in a public broadcasting firm in Milan, and I was going to stay on there. And I think when my father got wind of it, he offered me a part-time job doing public relations at the garbage company. New laws were coming up in the waste industry, and those poor garbage men were so used to just getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, picking up waste. They like to say they work half-time, they work 12 hours a day. The idea of regulating recycling, regulating solid waste disposal, regulating air quality if you deal in any way with chipping or grinding material. At one point we were regulated by 27 different agencies. It was a bit more than they were willing to take on at the time, and a dear friend of mine was doing some of that work with the planning departments with the garbage company, Elisa Giambastiani, and she went on to run the San Rafael Chamber of Commerce. So I took a part-time position there while I was closing up my house and preparing to move back to Italy, and that quickly moved to about a 70-hour work week. And I remember one time my father and I, who are both, as I mentioned, very emotional, got into a little tete-a-tete, and he said, "You're just going to have to you'll have to get used to working 10-hour days." And I said, "Oh, that'll be a blessing, because right now it's at about 14 hours." So it's all, though, worked out very well for me.
This is one of your friends says about you being a woman entering this field. "Patty dares to be one of the gutsiest women I have ever met. Petite Patty routinely walks into a room full of the toughest, meanest men in the garbage hauling business and politely tells them exactly what she thinks."
Yeah.
Is that true?
It is, because I found that I felt less of myself if I didn't speak up. And there were, in this world of waste management, it's got lots of accoutrements to it that bring with it a bad reputation, and on the East Coast it also has a much worse reputation, and has that element a little bit on the West Coast. So unless you speak up, and I found one of the first times when I finally did get the courage 11 years ago to speak up, that I was more, I was heard, I was listened to the next time. There was a respect level that I could feel in my heart, more than if I didn't say anything. And I've never been one to, quite frankly, make nice. As a matter of fact, someone has recently said that I don't suffer fools. And I don't. I guess I don't suffer them well, and I think that comes from teaching the severely handicapped and knowing how they try and how they tried. And with their handicap, were unable to do some of the things that the rest of us can do and sometimes take for granted. So I don't have a lot of patience for things or people that don't try.
Patty, you're talking about your two careers, really, the career in teaching and now the career in the sanitation business. It sounds like you've been working awfully hard.
Well, I married late too. I married at 40, so I really was married to my job, I guess, all along, and I've always enjoyed working, and that was always stressed. In my family, I come from a long line of people who've worked long hours and sometimes two jobs. And speaking of that, one thing I think, if I were to have or give some advice to a young woman working in a mostly male-oriented world, it would be that you need to realize that in order to succeed, perhaps, or to prove yourself successful and to glean respect, you'll have to recognize that you'll need to work 120% harder than those that are already on the job, or the other people that are there, perhaps the males, in order to make that be successful and happen for you, which is very difficult if you're a mother as well. I don't know how people do it. I see my life as very easy. I don't have children, unfortunately, and wish that I did, but people that have that job as well, I don't know how they're able to do it.
So are you saying that you've been working 10-hour days?
Lately, not as much, but there are those days that you've got the public hearing at night and the 7:30 meeting in the morning and something on the weekend, that you do wind up, literally you feel as though you're burning the candle at both ends, and get home and you've got that still going on in your mind, and you've got to find a way to rest and pull back and recoup for the next day.
In the early days, though, when people weren't so glad to see you come into the sanitation business, they, A, didn't like it that you were a woman, and B, didn't agree with some of the things that you were trying to change. Did you ever think of quitting?
Oh, yeah, I did. You know, you reflect back on perhaps other job offers, but then you quickly recognize what an opportunity this is. If this is a male-only world, there might be some lessons for others that I could be learning and passing on. This is a great opportunity, especially with recycling and what's happening there. And there's an incredible amount of consolidation happening in our field. So the small, independent voice. This has given me an opportunity to speak before the assembly, to be asked as a concerned individual with some expertise, a little bit of it in the waste industry, to speak at a hearing in Sacramento, and that has been really something I've been lucky. One thing that's coming to mind, lucky to have, is I remember going for an appointment and being told that I wouldn't get it because Italians didn't make good leaders. And I kind of, you know, I took that and said, oh, okay, because what are you going to do, right? And immediately thought of, well, hadn't they heard of Caesar and other Italian leaders? And you learn from those knocks too, don't you? And you reevaluate, you reinvent, you shift, and you know how they're not going to get you next time. You know, you'll find out another way to move around that obstacle. So I consider myself very, very lucky.
You've seen an awful lot of changes already, and you're still young. You have many years ahead of you in this business. Would you say that it still is a man's world?
Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, there were 2 other women in this statewide organization that I belong to, and there were 3 actually, and now there's just 1 remaining. And we're a group of about 120 privately owned garbage companies. The other 2 have left their positions, unfortunately. And I'll be their first woman president next year. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know that they are, but I am.
And maybe it will encourage that next wave of women to come into the field. Would you encourage young women to follow your footsteps?
Yes, I would. In some ways, quite selfishly, where do you get the opportunity? I'm on their executive committee. Where do you get the opportunity to have dinner with 11 men once a month? So that's been kind of a joy, and I'm not sure that everybody gets that opportunity. I have a good working relationship with those guys, and they've taught me a lot. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about that on the way here, I don't necessarily think of myself as female in that group of people, which is a good way of feeling accepted, I think. And I would hope, I would hope that my niece goes into this field. Either one of them, actually, either of my nieces, I would hope that I pave the way for them to do that. And not feel I can't imagine anybody in today's day and age feeling like they couldn't go into a field because they were a woman or a man. I hope that's not the case.
So there's the sanitation business during the day, and there are those public meetings at night. And it's not just one set of commitments. You have commitments to a number of boards and the Chamber of Commerce. And tell us a few of the activities.
Well, I was president of the Chamber of Commerce Board, and that also was something I felt as though I came to with, my God, what kind of credentials do I have for this? But I've lived in this community a very long time, and it was a way of fostering community through positive business perspective, which is, I think, what I brought to it. We're one of the largest businesses in the county and employ a little over 200 people. So understanding that sort of peter down effect where you employ someone and they fulfill 2 service sector jobs and kind of keeps the whole ball going, not so that somebody can make a profit, but so that the streets get paved via the sales tax, or so that we get brand new lighting on another street that didn't have lighting, or so that the polish on 4th Street now that is there because so many people came to the table and helped to foster that. I've been very lucky in that people have asked me to serve on a number of boards, and I've been able to do it. And my schedule is flexible enough to be able to do that. I'm on the MARC board, and I'm on the CYO board, and am on the County Planning Commission, and am in the process of running another school bond measure.
I'm very struck with the way that you look at a complex system in a big town like San Rafael and are inspired to feel you can make a difference. Where do you think that comes from?
Oh, probably from my father, and too from my teachers. We were always told that each voice made a difference, especially those teachers in high school. And high school for me was a very positive experience, so I guess I reflect mostly back on that. In that alternative school, we were allowed to work on special projects and focus in on that time. It was not a regimented hour-by-hour class situation. So I think that the individual voice, but also learning how to work in a team and contributing what your best skills were, which have helped me enormously in my job. I've learned over the years that you want to make sure that someone is in the job that they do best in, and that they fit into the spokes of the wheel. They are a spoke, but without that one spoke, the whole wheel won't go around. To try to assess who's best for what job and make them feel successful at what they're doing.
You've had great luck with role models in your life, and it started early. One of the things that's especially noticeable about your career, Patty, is the way that you have over and over again created community. And I'm thinking that that's something that's been important to you since you were a young child.
Yeah, I think so. I was a little girl in North Beach, and as I recall, we were able to walk everywhere. It wasn't a dangerous thing to walk everywhere. You know, San Francisco, you can really walk anywhere and not even have to have a car, even at night. And my grandmother ran a boarding house, and we were very much a part of her life. As a matter of fact, I wear this pin whenever I'm photographed, and I was sure to wear it tonight. It's actually something that was thrown out in the trash, but was hers. The back had fallen off, and somebody threw it out, and my grandfather found it. It was one of the only pieces of jewelry that she had. And yeah, she was definitely a gutsy person. She started out in life very young, went to school for 3 weeks total, but was self-educated and was able to read and write in both languages, Italian and English, and ran a boarding house to be able to help make ends meet, and started out in her professional life actually as a butcher, so was quite quite a beefy person. She carried a lot on her back, physically and emotionally.
It seems like she imparted some of that strength to you.
She did. I was
Yes.
lucky to have traveled with her when I was a little girl, so that meant a lot to me.
You lived in San Francisco when you were a small child, but you came to Marin fairly early on, and you also have a heart for and a foot in Italy.
I do. As a teacher, I was able to have a month off in the summer, and when we lived in North Beach, actually, there wasn't a lot of English spoken. It was still mostly an Italian-speaking community, and so I picked up some words and was able to go back with my parents, and when I got out of school and into teaching, went back every year, and am now doing a little bit of work trying to help the Italians along in their recycling efforts.
And so now you speak Italian? Yes.
I do.
What's that like to be a bilingual person living in Marin County?
It's great, although I wish I spoke Spanish, and I'm not a linguist. I didn't do well in school as a linguist and have tried desperately, and I think if there's anything that we all need to pick up as a skill right now, that would be to be able to speak Spanish. As much as a small segment of the population comes kicking and screaming to that, you're beginning to realize that in the retail world, they're already providing 2 languages. Most of the people that work with me are Spanish speaking, and when I get some free time, I'd like to be able to do that. My Italian does not translate. However, when I go shopping in Italy, it does help me quite a bit, or in talking to my family on the phone.
And in Italy, if you were going shopping and you saw something that was too expensive, what would you say to the shopkeeper?
Well, he started a little negotiation stance about how lovely that is, but
In
it's
Italian,
just,
can you say?
You mean now?
Yeah, speak a little Italian for us.
Oh,
Or you can say something else.
I can say something else. Oh, there's some wonderful phrases in Italian that I would like to have on this tape. C'è poco di fare is a good one, which is sort of there's very little to do, meaning when you come to a point in any problem in life where there's nothing more that can be done, there's no point in working on it anymore, give it a rest. C'è poco di fare. Or sempre in avanti. Always move forward. Doesn't matter if it's the walls are crumbling around you. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And we've all had those experiences when we think that I can't go on, and yet there's only one direction to go in. The rest of the world is crumbling behind me. And tanti belle cose, things. I wish you many beautiful things is a nice sort of way to end a letter. Or some of the older people, I remember when they were saying goodbye to my grandmother in Italy the last time she left, would say that to her, knowing that they would never see her again. And I always thought that was a nice way of imparting in a very short phrase some things. I also have to add that I'm not 100% Italian. My mother is Scandinavian. And it's a nice balance, actually, the two, because they couldn't be any more dissimilar. They are very different groups of people, and it's a nice balance to have.
You've spoken about what a tremendous influence your father is. What did you learn from your mother?
Compassion, especially toward animals and all creatures. I can remember my mother pulling me out of school. I think my father would have died if he'd known. In my junior year, when that first oil spill happened in San Francisco Bay, she pulled me out, and actually anybody she could grab at the school. Can you imagine that happening in today's world? And we went down to the sanctuary in Tiburon and cleaned birds for, I think, 12 hours, and went back the next day and the next day. And she just did that spontaneously. And she was also a strict disciplinarian. I think that she would even agree to that. And in many ways, I think that was very good for me, for my personality, and I know for my sisters. We knew what our expectations were, and we knew what limits were set, and that was helpful, you know, as a child growing up. And I imagine I was probably somewhat promiscuous, and to have limits set is something I'm grateful for.
As you look down the road 20 years or so for the sanitation business, what do you see?
I hope I see existing markets that work for to complete the wheel of recycling, so that we're not living in a place where we're just separating trash, which is not true recycling. We're not then telling our customers a lie about what we're doing. Right now we're just scraping by and making sure that markets stay stable. I'd like to make sure that the plastics industry isn't lying anymore to the nation about recycling, that that's actually happening, and it's not. I'd like to have them return my calls. My name is persona non grata. I have had the opportunity to stand up at national conventions and say, what you're saying to this group of environmentalists isn't true, because you won't buy my plastic, and you haven't, and you should tell people under what conditions will you buy plastic, and I know that there aren't any. So I would hope it's more sustainable. I think that word sustainability is popular now, but that recycling pays for itself, which it does not now, and that we're all going, when we go to the market, and buying something off of the shelf in bulk or in some sort of reused, recycled form, and thinking more like the Indians, the native Indians of America, where I will leave this place better off than I found it. And we're not there yet as a country.
You're an optimistic person. Do you think that's possible?
Maybe not in 20 years. I would like to think so. You see, though, the next generation coming up, fortunately the schools have trained children to recycle, like they did with the anti-smoking campaign. They start in the 2nd grade, and they wind up teaching their parents, and that's a very smart way of doing things. So I am glad that I've kept my ties with the teaching community, because it's helped us.
Sounds like you have a lot of plans for the work part of your life in the future. What about the rest of your life? As you look down the road, what do you see?
Oh, as I look down the road, what do I see? I'd like to completely unpack. We haven't completely unpacked. We moved the week before the Women's Hall of Fame, and my husband did all of the unpacking, and a friend of mine, Pam, helped him. And I'm eternally grateful for all of us who've recently remembered what it's like to unpack. We've got a wonderful new home. I hope to entertain more. A wonderful new old home. It's 96 years old, and I'd like to have people over. It's not a pretty house. It's not a grand house. It's just a very gracious place. I'd like to be able to spend more time with my family and my friends, and I feel some guilt in not being able to get to return phone calls readily. I'm probably one of the greatest cell phone users in the world, because that's how I keep up with all of the calls that come in. I try to answer even large issue problems with our service, in addition to smaller problems with a house that's missed. And I can't get back to my friends and my family as fast as I would like to. I'd like to have a little place in Italy, a little place with a little prato next to it, with a little vegetable garden, something that you can only walk to. Something out of the movie Enchanted April. Oh, wouldn't that be great?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great plan. Now tell us one more time, what is that great Italian phrase for I wish you many beautiful things?
Oh, tante belle cose.
Tante belle
Tante
cose.
belle cose.
Yes.
Yeah.
A good place to leave it.
Thank you.